everyone, Jason here. Okay, so I'm continuing with the Shearwater 17 and I'm just about to lay up the fiberglass on the outer hull. Now the outer hull, it's going to be 3 layers of fiberglass with epoxy. One full layer from side to side, then a patch that covers the bottom panels, and then a thin strip of fiberglass over just the ends. Now, we can do this in a 3-step process by laying up each layer of cloth, but we can also do it by laying out the cloth and then just saturating all 3 layers in one go. And so that's how we're gonna do it. So the first layer of fiberglass is gonna cover the entire bottom of the hull, from end to end, and all 4 panels. We're laying out the fiberglass all in one operation. So we're going to spread out the layers of fiberglass cloth dry on the hull, and then we're going to saturate it with the epoxy. As we lay out the fiberglass cloth, we're going to smooth it out to get rid of any wrinkles with our hands. We're going to gently pull the fiberglass cloth down and smooth over the ends. Once we have it the way we want it, we're going to trim off the fiberglass an inch or 2 below the sides. So now with the first layer of cloth in place, we're going to lay out the second layer. This layer of cloth is just going to cover the bottom panels. The third layer of fiberglass is going over the sharp ends of the hull to add extra protection for high wear areas. So we're going to extend the fiberglass from the tip of the bow back along the keel for about 3 to 4 feet, and then we're going to do the same at the stern. So now with the cloth in place, we're going to mix up some epoxy and we're going to start saturating the cloth. We're going to work from end to end, spreading the epoxy down the sides with a brush and our plastic spreader. We're going to work from the middle of the boat out towards the ends and down to the sides. This is going to help us smooth out any wrinkles as we go. Laying up the fiberglass and epoxy on the outer hull is relatively straightforward, and it can be done by one person. Still, having someone help you will get the job done a lot faster. Okay, so I've got the first coat of epoxy and the weave is still showing and the epoxy hasn't fully cured, so it's cured enough that I can lightly touch it, but likely if I was to press my fingernail into it, it would leave an indentation. So that's perfect timing for me to apply my next coat of epoxy so I get that chemical bond that we want. Now, if your epoxy's cured beyond that, it's going to be okay. You'll still get a mechanical bond, but remember, we want to get a chemical bond more than we want to get a mechanical bond. So what I want to do is just apply epoxy. It might take another couple coats, but I want to just build up the epoxy to fill the weave. And now there's only one last step before we flip the boat and start stripping the deck. We've got some high spots in our epoxy. I've got them where in some places where I've got the, a second or third layer of fiberglass, and also there's some loose threads from the fiberglass that are also higher. So what I'm gonna do is use my orbital sander and just sand those down, basically just taper them so they're level with the rest of the hull. Okay, now this is really common, don't worry about it. As you go, you're gonna see the epoxy is gonna, no longer be clear. It's gonna become cloudy where you've sanded it, scratched up. So don't worry about that. Once you apply the varnish later on, it's gonna go nice and clear again. All right, so as far as the sanding goes, start off with either an 80 or 100 or 120 grit paper. With the 80 grit, if you're going to use 80 grit, really be careful because we don't want to gouge through and ruin that fiberglass. We just want to slowly take down some of the epoxy so that we have a nice level smooth surface. All right, now working with epoxy and fiberglass, especially when you're sanding, you get a lot of dust in the air that is definitely not good for you to breathe in. Okay, so I highly recommend wearing a respirator. Okay, the store-bought dust mask, paper dust mask, it's really not going to cut it with this. So I wear a full face respirator, just make sure that it stays out of my eyes. I used to use just the mouth respirator and glasses, but I found that I would still get a lot of dust, on my face, and then, I start rubbing it. So this basically keeps it right off of me. Another thing that I recommend is either getting some sort of coverall to wear, or at the very minimum, wear some kind of hat. So if you have like a winter toque, throw the toque on, because all that dust that you create, it's going to land on top of you. You'll take your respirator off and you'll shake it off your hair and you're going to breathe it in. Okay, so the more covered up you are, the better. Safety is really important, and if you're planning on building a lot of boats, then take it serious.